The diplomatic space station Horizon drifted silently against the backdrop of a massive blue-green nebula, its crystalline structure refracting starlight in a mesmerizing display of technological marvel. Lieutenant Amanda Taylor stood motionless, her reflection barely visible against the transparent bulkhead. Around her, the station hummed with an intricate symphony of alien languages, communication technologies, and barely contained political tensions. Her standard-issue universal translator, a sleek device wrapped around her left wrist, translated the cacophony of alien dialects into a steady stream of text scrolling across her augmented reality interface. Most humans would have found the constant barrage of information overwhelming, but Amanda had trained herself to process multiple communication streams simultaneously, a skill that made her exceptional, yet perpetually overlooked. The station's interior was a masterpiece of interstellar engineering. Gravity zones shifted subtly to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of hundreds of alien species. Methane-breathing delegates from the Krell tax colonies floated in specialized chambers adjacent to silicon-based life forms from the Crystalline Confederacy. Gaseous entities from the Nebula Collective drifted in containment fields, their translucent forms shimmering with complex electromagnetic signatures. Amanda's credentials told a mundane story: communications specialist, third-grade clearance, minimal field experience. Her personnel file was a study in bureaucratic mediocrity, consistently good performance reviews, zero remarkable achievements. The Galactic Confederation's human contingent saw her as another cog in the massive diplomatic machine, notable only for her ability to process communication protocols with machine-like precision. What her file didn't reveal was her extraordinary capability to see patterns invisible to others. Years of studying communication systems had given her an intuitive understanding that transcended traditional analytical approaches. Where other specialists saw complex encryption and communication protocols, Amanda perceived intricate narrative structures, the hidden stories buried beneath layers of diplomatic language. Her current assignment was routine: monitoring communication channels during the most critical diplomatic summit in recent galactic history. The Krell Imperium and the Viridian Consensus were locked in a conflict that threatened to consume 37 star systems. Trillions of lives hung in the balance, yet the diplomatic corps treated the potential war with a disturbing sense of bureaucratic detachment. Amanda's workspace was a compact station barely 2 meters wide, nestled in a corner of the massive communication hub. Holographic displays surrounded her, each screen displaying a different communication stream. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, sorting through petabytes of data with minimal effort. Most observers would see nothing extraordinary, just another human specialist doing routine work. But something was different today. A subtle anomaly caught her attention. Most communication specialists would have missed it: a microscopic inconsistency in the quantum encryption protocols used by the Krell delegates. The difference was so minute that it would have been invisible to standard analysis algorithms. But Amanda's mind worked differently. She saw the anomaly not as a technical glitch, but as a potential narrative thread. The station's artificial environment maintained a carefully calibrated atmosphere. Temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition shifted seamlessly to accommodate the diverse biological requirements of its inhabitants. For most species, the environment was a marvel of technological adaptation. For Amanda, it was just another complex system waiting to be understood. Around her, alien diplomats moved with calculated precision. The Krell representatives were particularly impressive: silicon-based life forms whose exoskeletons reflected light in mesmerizing geometric patterns. Their communication was a blend of electromagnetic pulses and complex chemical signaling that would have been incomprehensible to most human observers. Nearby, a group of Viridian delegates conversed in low, resonant tones. Energy beings contained within intricate crystalline exostructures, they represented a civilization thousands of years older than humanity. Their diplomatic corps was legendary, known for manipulating conflict through subtle communication strategies that had maintained their influence across multiple galactic sectors. Amanda remained outwardly calm, but her mind was racing. The communication anomaly she discovered was more than a technical curiosity. It was a potential key to understanding the complex political landscape that was pushing two massive civilizations toward total war. No one noticed the young human specialist. No one realized that within her compact workspace, a solution to an interstellar conflict was beginning to take shape, a solution that would change galactic history forever. The central conference chamber of the Horizon Station pulsed with an electric tension that defied the carefully maintained environmental controls. Holographic displays flickered with star charts, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. Each projection a potential flashpoint in the escalating conflict between the Kralax Imperium and the Viridian Consensus. Ambassador Gregory Reeves, humanity's senior diplomatic representative, stood at the periphery of the gathering. His weathered face reflected decades of interstellar negotiations, each line a testament to the complex dance of galactic politics. He watched as the Kralax delegates positioned themselves with calculated precision, their silicon-based bodies reflecting the chamber's ambient lighting like living sculptures of obsidian and chrome. The Kralax delegation was led by High Mediator Kralax, a senior representative whose exoskeleton bore intricate markings denoting centuries of diplomatic service. Each movement was a carefully choreographed display of power and restraint. Electromagnetic pulses rippled across their external structures, a form of communication as complex as any verbal language, conveying nuanced emotional and political subtexts that would be invisible to less sophisticated observers. Opposite them, the Viridian representatives shimmered with an entirely different kind of presence. Contained within crystalline exostructures that seemed to pulse with internal energy, they represented a civilization that predated human existence by millennia. Their lead diplomat, Luminara, appeared as a condensed storm of electromagnetic energy, her form constantly shifting and reforming within her protective crystal matrix. The root of the conflict was deceptively simple on the surface. 37 star systems sat at the intersection of critical trade routes, their mineral-rich planets and strategic jump points creating a geographical nightmare of competing interests. But Amanda, watching from her monitoring station, understood that the true conflict ran far deeper than territorial disputes. Historical records showed a conflict stretching back thousands of years. The Kralax had once been a client civilization of the Viridians, subjected to centuries of technological and cultural subjugation. Their rise to independence had been bloody and traumatic, leaving deep scars on both civilizations. Each subsequent interaction became a complex dance of unresolved historical traumas. Economic intelligence reports told a more nuanced story. The 37 contested star systems contained rare quantum stabilization minerals crucial for faster-than-light communication networks. Control of these systems meant more than territorial expansion. It represented the potential to reshape galactic communication infrastructure. A veteran Confederation diplomat leaned close to his colleague, his voice a low whisper that Amanda's enhanced auditory implant caught with perfect clarity. 37 star systems will burn before this is over, he muttered, a statement of resignation rather than surprise. The Kralax delegation began their formal presentation. High Mediator Kralax projected holographic representations of their territorial claims, each projection accompanied by a complex series of electromagnetic pulses that conveyed layers of meaning beyond simple visual data. Trade routes, historical migration patterns, and mineral rights were woven into a narrative of righteous reclamation. The Viridian response was equally calculated. Luminara's energy form coalesced into a more defined shape, projecting counterclaims that spoke to centuries of established governance and cultural preservation. Her communication was a symphony of light, energy, and carefully modulated frequencies that told a story of protection and historical continuity. Amanda watched the proceedings with a detached professional interest that masked her growing excitement. Most observers saw a diplomatic standoff. She saw a communication puzzle of unprecedented complexity. The other species present, representing dozens of galactic civilizations, watched with a mixture of fear and resignation. The Confederation had successfully prevented major conflicts for generations, but this confrontation seemed different. The Kralax and Viridians had too much history, too many unresolved grievances. A delegation from the methane-breathing Krell-tax colonies shifted uncomfortably in their specialized environmental chambers. Representatives from the Crystalline Confederacy adjusted their energy fields, broadcasting subtle signals of diplomatic anxiety. Even the gaseous entities from the Nebula Collective seemed to condense slightly, their usually diffuse forms tightening with tension. Ambassador Reeves caught Amanda's eye briefly. In that momentary connection, she saw something beyond the diplomatic facade, a flicker of genuine concern that suggested he understood the true stakes of the situation. The conference was approaching its critical moment. Decades of tension, millennia of historical conflict, and the fate of trillions of lives hung in the balance. And nobody, absolutely nobody, was paying attention to the young human communications specialist whose mind was already unraveling the complex communication puzzle that could prevent the impending catastrophe. No one realized that the solution to this seemingly insurmountable conflict was taking shape in the most unexpected place imaginable. The personal quarters assigned to Amanda Taylor were a study in controlled chaos. Holographic displays covered every available surface, each screen flickering with streams of complex data that would have appeared incomprehensible to most observers. Quantum encryption protocols, communication logs, and historical diplomatic records danced in intricate patterns, forming a visual symphony that only Amanda could truly comprehend. She worked with a precision that bordered on obsession. The anomaly she discovered was more than a simple communication glitch. It was a fundamental weakness in the most advanced encryption systems used by two of the galaxy's most sophisticated civilizations. Most communication specialists would have dismissed the microscopic inconsistency as a minor technical artifact. Amanda saw it as a window into an entire system of miscommunication. Her workstation was a marvel of human technological adaptation. Custom-built interfaces allowed her to process multiple communication streams simultaneously, her augmented neural implants working in perfect harmony with advanced quantum computing systems. Where alien technologies relied on pure computational power, Amanda's approach was fundamentally different. She looked for patterns, for the stories hidden between the lines of data. The Kralax communication protocols were particularly fascinating. Based on a complex system of quantum entanglement and electromagnetic pulse modulation, they represented the pinnacle of galactic communication technology. Most specialists would spend years studying just one aspect of their communication system. Amanda was dismantling their entire approach in a matter of hours. She pulled up historical communication logs, tracing the evolution of the Kralax diplomatic encryption methods. Each log was a puzzle piece, each transmission a potential key to understanding the deeper vulnerabilities. The Kralax believed their communication system was unbreakable, a product of millennia of technological refinement. They were wrong. Amanda's methodology was uniquely human. Where alien civilizations approached communication as a purely technical challenge, she saw it as a narrative problem. Each encryption protocol told a story, a complex dialogue between technological capability and cultural limitation. The Kralax had developed their communication systems as a form of cultural defense, a technological wall meant to protect their collective identity. But walls always have weak points. She began mapping the quantum entanglement patterns, identifying microscopic inconsistencies that repeated across multiple communication channels. Most analysis algorithms would have missed these variations. They were so minute that they appeared as mere statistical noise. But Amanda's mind worked differently. She saw the noise as a language of its own. The Viridian communication systems proved equally vulnerable. As an energy-based civilization, their communication relied on complex frequency modulations that were considered unbreakable by every known galactic standard. Their technological superiority was so assumed that they had become blind to their own limitations. Amanda worked through the night, her augmented eyes barely blinking, neural implants processing information at speeds that would have overwhelmed most biological systems. Empty nutrition pouches and cold caffeine injectors littered her workspace, physical evidence of her intense focus. Her personal communication device chirped. A standard-issue message from her supervisors, requesting a routine status report. She ignored it. The anomaly she was investigating was far more important than bureaucratic paperwork. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A subtle correlation between Krulax and Viridian communication protocols revealed a shared vulnerability that neither civilization had detected. It wasn't a technical flaw, but a fundamental misunderstanding of communication itself. The more advanced their technologies became, the more they had lost touch with the basic principles of genuine dialogue. Amanda began constructing a comprehensive analysis. Each line of her report was a carefully crafted argument, demonstrating how decades of technological arrogance had created massive blind spots in their communication strategies. She wasn't just identifying a technical weakness, she was exposing a profound philosophical limitation. The Krulax believed their quantum encryption was a form of cultural armor. The Viridians saw their communication technologies as an extension of their evolutionary superiority. Both were wrong. Their most advanced systems had become elaborate mechanisms of misunderstanding. As dawn broke across the diplomatic station, Amanda realized she was looking at more than just a communication vulnerability. She was holding the potential key to preventing a war that could consume entire star systems. Nobody had asked her to do this. Nobody expected anything from the young human communications specialist. But Amanda Taylor understood something fundamental that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had forgotten. True communication was never about technology. It was about understanding. The maintenance corridors of the Horizon Diplomatic Station were a labyrinth of technological marvels, designed to support hundreds of alien physiological requirements. Amanda Taylor moved through these hidden passageways with a purpose that transcended her official clearance level, her augmented neural implants working overtime to mask her movements from the station's extensive surveillance systems. Her personal quarters had become ground zero for an operation that would fundamentally reshape galactic diplomacy. Holographic displays covered every available surface, each screen a window into a complex web of communication protocols, historical data, and quantum encryption algorithms. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was a meticulously constructed strategic framework. The plan forming in Amanda's mind was audacious, borderline impossible. She would create a quantum communication sequence that would simultaneously expose the vulnerabilities of both the Krulax Imperium and the Viridian Consensus. It wasn't about military might or technological superiority, but about revealing the intricate web of manipulations that had sustained their conflict for generations. Her custom-built communication interface was a marvel of human ingenuity. Where alien technologies relied on massive computational arrays, Amanda's system was elegant in its simplicity. She had reverse-engineered communication protocols from multiple civilizations, creating a hybrid system that could penetrate the most sophisticated encryption methods ever developed. The first phase involved mapping the communication vulnerabilities she had discovered. Each quantum encryption protocol was like a complex language with its own grammar, syntax, and hidden contextual meanings. Amanda was essentially creating a universal translation key that would expose the fundamental misunderstandings at the heart of the conflict. Her supervisor, Commander Elena Rodriguez, would have stopped her if she knew. The official channels were clear. Junior communication specialists did not unilaterally develop strategies that could impact entire civilizations, but Amanda had long since stopped believing in bureaucratic limitations. Historical records told a story of systematic miscommunication. The Krulax and Viridians had been talking past each other for generations, each communication becoming a layer of misunderstanding that reinforced their mutual hostility. Amanda's approach was to strip away those layers, to reveal the raw communication beneath the technological facade. She worked with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Nutrition patches provided sustained energy, while neural stabilizers prevented the mental fatigue that would have overwhelmed a standard human mind. Her augmented cognitive abilities allowed her to process multiple complex communication streams simultaneously, seeing patterns that no alien technology could detect. The communication sequence she was developing was more than a technical exploit. It was a narrative intervention, a way to force both civilizations to confront the stories they had been telling themselves about each other. Each line of code was carefully crafted to expose not just technical vulnerabilities, but the psychological barriers that had sustained their conflict. Her personal communication device chirped, a message from her immediate supervisor requesting a status update. Amanda ignored it. The diplomatic summit was entering its critical phase, and every moment counted. The Kralax communication protocols were particularly challenging. Based on a quantum entanglement system that used electromagnetic pulse modulation, they represented the pinnacle of galactic communication technology. Most specialists would have spent years studying just one aspect of their system. Amanda was preparing to dismantle their entire approach in a matter of hours. She began constructing the final phase of her intervention. The communication sequence would be more than a simple data breach. It would be a strategic narrative that exposed the economic, cultural, and historical manipulations that had kept the conflict alive. Each quantum packet was a surgical strike against the systems of miscommunication. The risks were enormous. If she failed, she would be court-martialed, her career destroyed. If she succeeded, she would fundamentally alter the course of galactic diplomacy. Most humans would have been paralyzed by the potential consequences. Amanda saw only the opportunity. Her augmented neural implants worked in perfect synchronization, processing billions of communication variables each second. The interface between human intuition and advanced technology created something entirely unique, a communication strategy that no alien civilization could have conceived. As the final diplomatic sessions approached, Amanda completed the last lines of her quantum communication sequence. It was more than a technical solution. It was a bridge between civilizations, a way to force two warring cultures to truly see each other for the first time. Nobody had asked her to do this. Nobody expected anything from a junior human communication specialist. But Amanda Taylor understood something fundamental that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had forgotten. The most powerful weapon was never technology. It was understanding. The final diplomatic session began with a suffocating tension that seemed to compress the very atmosphere of the conference chamber. Holographic displays flickered with territorial maps, trade routes, and economic projections. Each projection a potential trigger for total war. High Mediator Kralax of the Kralax delegation stood motionless, their silicon-based exoskeleton reflecting the chamber's harsh lighting like a living mirror of obsidian and chrome. Across the chamber, Luminara of the Viridian delegation pulsed with electromagnetic energy, her crystalline containment field vibrating with barely contained aggression. The accumulated weight of centuries of conflict hung in the air, thick and oppressive. Amanda Taylor sat at her monitoring station, her fingers hovering imperceptibly above the quantum communication interface. Her neural implants synchronized with her custom-built communication system, a device that represented the pinnacle of human adaptive technology. To her left, a holographic display tracked the diplomatic proceedings with clinical precision. To her right, her quantum communication sequence waited, a digital weapon more potent than any conventional armament. Ambassador Gregory Reeves caught her eye briefly. In that momentary connection, she saw a flicker of something beyond diplomatic training, a genuine understanding of the catastrophic potential of the moment. The Kralax delegation began their final territorial presentation. Electromagnetic pulses accompanied each holographic projection, conveying layers of meaning far beyond simple visual data. Trade routes, mineral rights, historical migration patterns. Each element was a carefully constructed argument for territorial expansion. Luminara's response was equally calculated. Her energy form coalesced into a more defined shape, projecting counterclaims that spoke to centuries of established governance. The chamber became a battlefield of communication, each transmission a potential spark for total war. Amanda's heart rate remained steady. Her augmented systems regulated physiological responses, maintaining perfect calm in the face of galactic-scale tension. The quantum communication sequence was more than a technical exploit. It was a narrative intervention designed to expose the fundamental miscommunications that had sustained the conflict for generations. Each quantum packet was a surgical strike against the systems of misunderstanding that had brought two civilizations to the brink of mutual destruction. She initiated the sequence. At first, nothing seemed to change. The diplomatic proceedings continued with their ritualistic precision. But beneath the surface, Amanda's communication exploit began to work its magic. Quantum communication packets began to penetrate the most sophisticated encryption systems in galactic history. The Kralax delegates' communication channels stuttered. Holographic projections flickered and distorted. Electromagnetic pulse communications became garbled, revealing layers of hidden context that had been carefully maintained for generations. The Viridian delegation's communication systems followed suit. Luminara's energy form began to destabilize, revealing communication patterns that exposed decades of manipulative diplomatic strategies. Economic records, historical communications, hidden diplomatic communications, all began to unravel simultaneously. The entire diplomatic station went silent. Delegates from dozens of galactic civilizations watched in stunned disbelief. The Kralax delegation's carefully maintained facade began to crack. Their historical narratives of territorial righteousness, dissolved as hidden communication logs, exposed the complex economic motivations behind their expansionist strategies. The Viridian delegation found themselves equally exposed. Centuries of seemingly benevolent governance unraveled as communication logs revealed systematic economic exploitation and cultural manipulation. Ambassador Reeves stood motionless, understanding the full implications of what was happening. This was more than a communication breach. This was a fundamental reset of galactic diplomatic understanding. Amanda's intervention had done something unprecedented. She had not destroyed communication systems. She had revealed them, stripped away the layers of technological complexity to expose the raw, human, or alien stories beneath. The chamber remained in shocked silence. 37 star systems that moments ago had been on the brink of total war now hung in a delicate balance of newfound understanding. No one noticed the young human communications specialist. No one realized that within moments she had accomplished what millennia of advanced diplomatic efforts had failed to achieve. The most powerful weapon was never technology. It was understanding. The moments following Amanda Taylor's communication intervention stretched like an eternity. The diplomatic chamber of the Horizon Station became a landscape of frozen disbelief, alien delegates suspended in a collective state of shock that transcended biological limitations. High Mediator Kralax of the Kralax delegation was the first to move. Their silicon-based exoskeleton flickered with electromagnetic pulses of confusion, communication systems desperately trying to reconstruct the narrative that had just been violently dismantled. Intricate geometric patterns across their external structure shifted rapidly, a visible manifestation of their internal turmoil. Luminara of the Viridian delegation experienced a more dramatic transformation. Her energy-based form began to destabilize, crystalline containment fields wavering as millennia of carefully constructed historical narratives collapsed in milliseconds. What had once been a controlled electromagnetic presence now pulsed with genuine uncertainty. The communication breach went far beyond a simple technical exploit. Amanda had surgically exposed the complex web of economic, political, and cultural manipulations that had sustained the conflict between the Kralax and Viridian civilizations. Hidden diplomatic logs, suppressed economic records, and generations of carefully managed communication narratives lay bare for all to see. Ambassador Gregory Reeves understood the full implications immediately. His decades of diplomatic experience had taught him that wars were rarely about simple territorial disputes. They were about stories, narratives of hurt, of perceived injustice, of economic manipulation. Amanda's intervention had stripped away those layers with surgical precision. The Galactic Confederation's senior leadership scrambled to process the unprecedented situation. Communication channels that had been stable for generations now revealed a complex tapestry of manipulation, economic exploitation, and systemic miscommunication. What had appeared to be a simple territorial dispute was now exposed as a multi-generational system of mutual deception. Amanda remained at her monitoring station, her augmented neural systems processing the cascading consequences of her intervention. Most human specialists would have been overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. She remained calm, her focus absolute. Around her, delegates from dozens of galactic civilizations tried to make sense of the situation. Methane-breathing Krell tax representatives huddled in their specialized environmental chambers. Crystalline life forms from the outer spiral arms of the galaxy adjusted their communication frequencies, attempting to comprehend the magnitude of the communication breach. The economic implications were staggering. The 37 contested star systems were revealed to be far more than simple territorial disputes. Hidden communication logs exposed complex economic networks that had been manipulating both the Krell and Viridian civilizations for generations. Trade routes, mineral rights, communication infrastructure, all had been part of an elaborate system of mutual exploitation. Commander Elena Rodriguez, Amanda's direct supervisor, approached her station with a mixture of confusion and barely contained anger. The official communication protocols were clear. Junior specialists did not unilaterally reshape galactic diplomacy. Lieutenant Taylor, Rodriguez's voice carried a dangerous edge. Explain exactly what you've done. Amanda's response was calm, almost clinical. I've revealed the truth, she said simply. Nothing more. The Krell delegation's communication systems continued to struggle. Their most advanced encryption protocols, considered unbreakable by every known galactic standard, had been systematically dismantled. Layers of diplomatic messaging that had been carefully constructed over generations now lay exposed, their intricate deceptions laid bare. Luminara of the Viridian delegation slowly reconstituted her energy form. The intervention had done more than expose technical vulnerabilities. It had forced a fundamental revaluation of their entire approach to interstellar communication and conflict resolution. Ambassador Reeves moved through the chamber, observing the unfolding chaos. He recognized something that few others did. This was more than a communication breach. This was a fundamental reset of galactic diplomatic understanding. The station's artificial gravity systems seemed to fluctuate, matching the emotional turbulence of the gathered delegates. Holographic displays flickered, communication systems struggled to maintain stability, and the carefully maintained facade of galactic diplomacy began to crumble. No one had expected a junior human communications specialist to accomplish what generations of advanced diplomatic efforts had failed to achieve. No one had understood the potential of a truly innovative approach to communication. Amanda Taylor had done more than prevent a war. She had exposed the fundamental stories that had sustained conflict, forcing two entire civilizations to confront the narratives they had been telling themselves for generations. In the stunned silence of the diplomatic chamber, a new understanding was beginning to take shape. The aftermath of Amanda Taylor's communication intervention rippled across the galaxy like a quantum shockwave. What had begun as a potentially catastrophic diplomatic summit had transformed into the most significant moment of interstellar communication in recent history. The Galactic Confederation's Emergency Review Board convened in a specially secured chamber, their deliberations broadcast across multiple communication networks. Delegates from hundreds of different civilizations watched with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. Amanda sat before them, her posture relaxed, her augmented neural systems processing the complex emotional landscape of the hearing. High Counselor Michael Chen, a veteran of decades of interstellar diplomacy, studied the young human specialist with an intensity that made most witnesses uncomfortable. Lieutenant Taylor, he began, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority. You have effectively dismantled decades of diplomatic protocols with a single communication intervention. Amanda's response was measured. I exposed existing vulnerabilities, she said simply. The communication systems were already broken. I merely made that brokenness visible. The Krell delegation, represented by a modified communication construct that maintained their core identity, presented a surprising response. Their traditional aggressive posturing had been replaced by a genuine desire to understand. High Mediator Kreelax's communication interface revealed layers of historical context that had been deliberately obscured for generations. Luminara of the Viridian delegation appeared in a more stable energy form, her crystalline containment fields now displaying a transparency that was unprecedented. The communication intervention had done more than expose technical vulnerabilities. It had created a framework for genuine dialogue. Economic analysis teams worked around the clock, unpacking the complex network of manipulations that had sustained the potential conflict. The 37 contested star systems were revealed to be far more than simple territorial disputes. They were the nexus of a multi-generational economic and communication exploitation system that had benefited numerous intermediary civilizations. Ambassador Gregory Reeves became an unexpected advocate for Amanda. His testimony before the review board highlighted the fundamental innovation of her approach. "We have always treated communication as a technical challenge," he argued. Lieutenant Taylor demonstrated that it is fundamentally a narrative problem. The human diplomatic corps found themselves in an unprecedented position. A junior specialist had accomplished what entire departments had failed to achieve for generations. Amanda's approach challenged every existing framework of interstellar communication and conflict resolution. Research teams began studying her communication intervention with unprecedented intensity. Her custom-built communication system represented a fundamental breakthrough in how civilizations could understand each other. Where previous approaches relied on complex technological solutions, Amanda had demonstrated the power of narrative understanding. The Kreelax communication protocols underwent a complete redesign. Their most advanced encryption systems, once considered unbreakable, were systematically dismantled and rebuilt with a focus on transparency and genuine communication. The intervention had exposed not just technical vulnerabilities, but the psychological barriers that had sustained their conflict. Viridian diplomatic strategies experienced an equally profound transformation. Their centuries-old approach to interstellar relations was fundamentally restructured. The energy-based civilization began to develop communication protocols that prioritized genuine understanding over historical narrative maintenance. Amanda found herself at the center of a galactic conversation she had never anticipated. Research institutions, diplomatic academies, and communication specialists from hundreds of civilizations sought to understand her methodology. Her neural implants and communication approach became the subject of extensive study. The economic implications were staggering. The complex network of intermediary civilizations that had profited from the potential conflict found themselves exposed. Trade routes, communication infrastructure, and economic networks that had sustained generations of tension were systematically dismantled. High Counselor Chen made a surprising recommendation to the Galactic Confederation leadership. Lieutenant Taylor has demonstrated an approach to communication that transcends our existing technological frameworks, he argued. We need to fundamentally reimagine our understanding of interstellar dialogue. Amanda remained remarkably composed throughout the process. Where most humans would have been overwhelmed by the attention, she maintained her focus on the fundamental principle that had guided her intervention, the belief that true communication was about understanding, not technological complexity. The 37 star systems that had been on the brink of total war now became a testing ground for a new approach to interstellar cooperation. Economic resources that would have been devoted to conflict were redirected toward collaborative research and mutual development. As the hearing concluded, Amanda understood something profound. She had done more than prevent a war. She had demonstrated a uniquely human approach to problem solving, one that prioritized understanding over technological superiority. The galaxy was changing, and a junior human communications specialist had been the catalyst. 5 years after the diplomatic intervention that changed everything, Amanda Taylor found herself lecturing at the Galactic Confederation's Advanced Communication Institute. The massive lecture hall was filled with delegates from hundreds of different civilizations, each species represented by unique communication interfaces that had been fundamentally redesigned in the wake of her groundbreaking work. Her office overlooked a reconstruction zone, in the 37 star systems that had once been on the brink of total war. What was once a potential battlefield now served as a collaborative research hub, where Krulax, Viridian, and dozens of other civilizations worked together on unprecedented scientific and cultural exchange projects. The transformation had been more profound than anyone could have anticipated. Humans were no longer seen as the newest and least significant members of the Galactic Confederation. They had become sought-after mediators, communication specialists, and strategic analysts. Amanda's intervention had fundamentally reshaped how civilizations understood communication, conflict, and cooperation. Her latest research project explored the deeper psychological mechanisms of interstellar communication. Where previous approaches had been purely technical, Amanda's methodology integrated cultural understanding, psychological insight, and technological innovation. The Krulax and Viridian civilizations had become her primary collaborators, their once antagonistic relationship now a model of cooperative research. Ambassador Gregory Reeves, now a senior advisor to the Confederation's diplomatic corps, often visited her institute. "You didn't just prevent a war," he would tell her. "You demonstrated an entirely new approach to understanding between civilizations." The economic transformations were equally remarkable. The complex network of intermediary civilizations that had profited from potential conflicts found themselves obsolete. Trade routes, communication infrastructure, and diplomatic channels were being rebuilt with a focus on genuine understanding rather than manipulation. Amanda's communication intervention had become a case study in every diplomatic academy across the galaxy. Her custom-built communication system was now standard training for communication specialists from hundreds of different civilizations. What had once been seen as a radical approach was now considered fundamental diplomatic practice. The Krulax delegation had undergone the most profound transformation. Their once rigid communication protocols now prioritized transparency and genuine dialogue. High Mediator Krulax had become a leading advocate for the new approach, frequently citing Amanda's work as a fundamental breakthrough in interstellar relations. Luminara of the Viridian delegation had evolved into a key research partner. Their energy-based civilization had completely restructured its approach to communication and conflict resolution. The complex layers of historical manipulation that had once defined their diplomatic strategies had been systematically dismantled. The Galactic Confederation's Communication Research Institute had been renamed in her honor, an unprecedented recognition for such a young specialist. Students from across the galaxy studied her methodologies, her approach to communication becoming a foundational principle of interstellar dialogue. Her personal life remained relatively unchanged. Amanda maintained the same focused intensity that had characterized her original intervention. Where most would have been overwhelmed by the recognition, she remained committed to the fundamental principle that had guided her work, the belief that true communication was about genuine understanding. Technological innovations emerged from her continued research. Communication systems became more than just information transfer mechanisms. They became tools for cultural exchange, psychological understanding, and genuine cooperation. The line between technological communication and cultural dialogue began to blur. The 37 star systems that had once been a potential battlefield now served as a living laboratory for interstellar cooperation. Research stations, collaborative development projects, and cultural exchange programs demonstrated a new approach to galactic interaction. Ambassador Reeves often reflected on the significance of her intervention. Humans brought something unique to galactic diplomacy, he would tell junior specialists. The ability to see beyond technological complexity, to understand the narratives that drive conflict. Amanda's neural implants continued to evolve, becoming a model for communication integration across different biological systems. What had once been seen as a uniquely human technological approach was now recognized as a fundamental breakthrough in interstellar communication. Her original team at the Communication Monitoring Station had become legendary. Commander Elena Rodriguez, once skeptical of her unconventional approach, now led the most innovative communication research division in the Galactic Confederation. As she looked out over the reconstruction zones, Amanda understood the true significance of her intervention. It wasn't about preventing a war or exposing communication vulnerabilities. It was about demonstrating a fundamental truth, that understanding was the most powerful tool in any civilization's arsenal. The galaxy had changed, and it all began with a single communication specialist who refused to accept the limitations of existing systems.